So, anyway, let's talk about stippling. Or actually, let's talk about quilting. How to prepare for quilting, how to set your machine up. You can do quilting, machine quilting on any machine, period. Whether you have a machine that, as long as the needle can go up and down, you can quilt on it. What makes some machines easier than others is some of the features that they have, such as if they have a bigger harp or a big needle to the big bed, lots of quilt space. That makes a difference. I have been known to quilt on a featherweight. I did a pretty large one on my featherweight. It wasn't, I said a lot of bad words because you were in this little tight spot and I couldn't quite handle that too well. Not with a lot of swear words. I did a lot of swear words with that one. so anyway, to set up your machine, what makes quilting easier is the best thing, ideal thing is to be able to have a flat surface. And I have my machine recessed into the table. The other thing, it helps to have a slipperier surface. So usually before I do a lot of quilting, I will take some pledge or some furniture polish on a soft cloth and buff the area, buff the throat plate, the whole area in here, so things are nice and slick and clean. Let's see. You ideally, and I'm not doing it, I need to raise this chair up for more quilting because this is too low. You should have your elbow at a 90 degrees, so I shouldn't move this up some. For some reason this chair doesn't like to stay up. There, this is how it's supposed to be. That way you can see really well. Okay, what you need to have is a free motion foot, and there's different kinds of free motion feet. This is the one I'm using, the Quilter's Choice Professional, which is the same thing as the Jane. And here comes my helper. And I've taken off the regular foot. Yes, I know. Go away. No, you're not stealing anything. Come here. Come here. Sorry. Go down. Go on. Go see Daddy. Sorry. You also want to have either quilting needles or they're nicer because the tip is nice and sharp and elongated, and usually the eye is a little bit bigger for quilting thread, so it helps to have a quilting needle in the machine. Let's see. You want to lower your feed dogs if you can, although some people don't. Sometimes they say, oh, I like a little bit of resistance on the back, so you can leave them up if they are causing too much resistance. And here she goes again. Forgot what I was saying. Like if you don't have the ability to lower your feed dogs, you can actually take a card and tape it over top of your feed dogs so that the fabric will slide over top of them and not catch on them. Also, thread is important. You can use pretty much any kind of thread. For me, color is more important than anything. You want a thread that your machine likes. There's one thread that none of my machines like for some reason, and I don't know why, and it's Superior's bottom line thread. I use it for a lot of things, but I can't use it for quilting. I always get skip stitches, and it's just these machines. I don't know if it's the way I have the tensions or the needles or whatever, but it causes problems. So some of my favorite threads to use is I like to use Madeira. This is called Arrow Quilt, which is it's a 40 weight polyester thread. You do not have to quilt with cotton if you don't want to, because a lot of old wives' tales say that if you have cotton fabric, you should use cotton thread. Well, cotton thread, because polyester thread will break the fibers over time. Well, I think Superior Threads have done some testing, and they said that really there's no difference. Cotton thread will cut the fabric just as fast as polyester, so it really doesn't matter. To me, how the quality of the thread, you want to spool out the thread and check to make sure that there's no knots or no, they call them slubs, little globs of thread, and that you have consistent tension, consistent diameter going all the way through the thread. Because if you have differences in the thickness of your thread from part of the thread to another part of the thread, that can affect your tensions. Okay. My favorite one to use actually is So Fine by Superior Threads, and it also is a polyester, and it's like nice and knotted now. Goodness, here we go. She's ignored me all day until she knows she's becoming a camera hog. Aren't you, Lily? Okay. I have also in the past used, this is Robus and Anton 50 weight cotton thread. This is 100% Egyptian cotton. This is a nice one to use. The cotton threads tend to be a little bit more linty, but that's okay. Just clean out your machine. I have been known to use, this is Sulky's monofilament polyester thread. It's really, really thin. This I use very rarely. I will only use it when I'm having to do color changes constantly. Like if I'm doing appliques, then I will sometimes use it. I don't ever use this on anything I'm quilting for a child because it skips stitches. It's notorious for skipping stitches and you can't see that it's skipped because it comes in smoke and clear and you really can't see the thread. And then what happens is little fingers and toes can work their way up underneath their thread and underneath the thread where it's skipped, and it can cut off circulation. So don't use this on children's stuff for children. When I'm getting really fancy, like for my competition quilts, is what's really wonderful to use is this YLI silk thread, and it is very fine and has a beautiful sheen to it and absolutely luxurious, and I use it. I have one spool of silk thread. This is the silk thread that I got from YLI, and I guard this like gold, and I keep it in a drawer, and I keep it well protected because this is one expensive spool of thread. But I use this on my show quilts, all in ivory, right? Okay, I'll put that over here. Another one that I will use is I've also been known to use polyester embroidery thread. It's going to give you a higher sheen, but sometimes sometimes color is the most important thing to me. I don't want the stitches to show, and then I'll use color. I'll make sure the color blends in, or contrast, whichever one you want. Let me put these threads away. No help. Thank you. Okay, and I'm gonna put this in the drawer. Oh, I changed the foot to the free motion. It's good to have a good pair of scissors. And let's talk about what those threads look like, okay? I don't know if this is going to show out really well, but you're always welcome to come by and look at it. What I tell you when you're selecting thread is that the thinner the thread, the more you notice the pattern. The thicker the thread, the more you notice the stitching. So when you're new to quilting, try a thin thread. No one's going to notice if those stitches are not perfectly even, or some are close together and some are far apart. They're not going to be able to see it. So like, I don't know if you can see this. This one here is using invisible nylon thread or invisible polyester. And you really can't see it because all you can see is the pattern. Let me stand over here so I can see what I'm telling you guys. Okay, yeah. See, that one is the invisible nylon. See, and all you really see is the pattern. Then we're going to go to here to 60 weight bobbin thread, which is the same thing as bottom line or finishing touch. And again, you really can't see the stitching. Just a tiny bit more. There's a tiny bit more shine. And of course, this is my favorite, the silk. Again, you're mostly going to notice the pattern, but you'll see a little bit of that luxurious sheen that silk gives you. Okay, then we'll come over here, and this is using that 50 weight cotton. That's using a Robus and Anton 50 weight cotton, and now you can start to see that stitching. See, you can tell how far the stitches are apart. This one is 40 weight embroidery thread. Again, now see how you can see those stitches pretty well, and it's shiny. Okay, and by the way, invisible thread is anything but invisible thread. It's shiny, it's light reflective, so you're still going to see it. So, okay, and then this one is, yes, I have used metallic thread. The metallic thread here is kind of tarnished. It's actually gold, but it's, but yes, I have even quilted with metallic thread, no problem. Now we're getting to a thicker thread. This one right here is a 30 weight cotton. And now you can really start to see that stitching because the thread is thicker. And then over here we've got a 12 weight cotton, which is about the same, and you can really see the stitching, and if those stitches are not even, you're going to really see it. And then finally this one is the 12 weight cotton right here, and you can really see that stitching. You almost see the stitching more than you see the pattern at that point when it's that thick. So that's the effect that the threads have on your quilting. Are you... See, there she is. She's not leaving today. Okay, let's talk about if I can get her to move. Okay, you need to move, sweetheart. Thank you. Okay, now we have what is stippling. The stipple police. There is no stipple police. No, get off the quilts. Thank you. Okay, this is classic stippling, which means it's the classic puzzle piece. See right here, there's the classic puzzle piece, and they sort of loop around, sort of like a puzzle piece. Everybody's stippling looks unique to them because everybody is different. It's just almost like a fingerprint. There are some quilt show judges that say that even though the names are covered up on these quilts, she's really showing off today. See her? Get out of there. You're not sewing. Get out of here. Okay, that even though the names are covered up, they don't know whose quilts these are. Come on, Lily. Get out of here. Do I have to get the squirt bottle? I mean it. I'm going to get it. She knows I'm not going to squirt her. But anyway, they can, names are covered up when you enter a quilt show. And so, but some of the judges say that they can identify who the quilter is by just looking at the stippling after a while. Okay, now just pushed her. Okay, this is larger quilting. This is a 1/4 inch apart. All the stitching is about a 1/4 inch apart. When it gets to be bigger, it's technically called meandering, but it's the same stitch. Yet they can make the quilt look different. These are the same pattern used by with different quilting designs on there. Okay. Then we've got, this one is really big meandering, and this is almost like comfort size. Let's see if you can see it. See, that's almost like a comforter. That's really big. It would get done really fast. And then they have micro stippling, and it's really tiny. This is about 1/8 of an inch apart. And the overall difference on them, it's hard to see here, but the tighter the quilting, the more you notice the pattern that you're not quilting. So this is an applique. So this flattens the background. Anytime you do really heavy stippling on the background, it hides it. It flattens it out, and you more notice this. When you have a big quilting pattern, you're more likely to notice this sort of blends in sort of flat with everything else. So it doesn't really, you don't really notice it as, this doesn't pop out as well. Conventional stippling, it pops out a little bit, not a whole lot, but it does pop out. I tend to do a lot of micro stippling to make things really pop. Okay, so stippling is technically, I'll get a piece of paper out because I've got more than one in here. This is just an old picture frame, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in a minute. You think of a puzzle piece right here, and you start in one area, and you're going to do just little curves, little like a serpentine, and then every little bit change direction. And for beginners, I usually say turn, turn, change direction. Curve, do like a puzzle piece, and then change direction. When I get lost, it's okay to echo along something else because I want to come over here. What you don't want to do is something You don't want to go in lines, predictable lines, because now you can really see that you're going into, you want to be a little more random than that. So see how that's kind of, yeah, I can figure out, okay, just keep changing direction. Try not to build yourself into a corner. Like say if I had come over here and now I can't get to this part that I need to do over here, just break your thread, then sort of come in here and add the thread here and then continue on. Also, if you have any stitch in the ditches or outside edges, just go along till you come to somewhere else and then work your way in. My husband says that I do stippling very well because this is how I drive. I'm always lost. So if you think, oh, I'm always lost, you just keep doing, I just keep doing those little half circles until and with me, you can usually tell when I'm lost and I can't see where I'm going because I swing out like this. And you know what? It's okay to put that in there. It's okay to put in a star and continue on. It's okay to write your name. It's okay to do a lot of things. There is no quilt police. This is your project, your personality. What you want to say shows up in your quilt, which is why I like to do my own quilting. I don't like to send it out for someone else to quilt, and I don't like to put it on a long arm with a program and a robot. Yes, you have perfect stitches, but to me those always look cold. When you've got imperfections in the quilt, and there are no such thing as a perfect quilt, there's always something wrong with it, and that's good because we are not perfect people, but it shows our personality and our soul when things aren't so perfect. I don't care if they're perfect. I'm more interested in getting it done. Years ago, when I had the ribbons, I've got a few ribbons. I'll dig them out. I dig them out of the closet one day. Okay, one good way to practice is it helps to doodle. It helps to have a piece of paper to just doodle yourself, and whenever you're sitting down. I used to do this at traffic when I was stuck in traffic, because what else are you going to do, sit there while you're on the beltway? So I usually had a clipboard with some paper on it, and I would just draw out quilting designs because it was better than sitting there with road rage. I also will do it in front of the TV when I have a chance to watch the TV, and so you know it helps to have it. Now, one way that you can actually practice if you're like get a little nervous is that you can take your pen, and will this one work? This is a dry erase marker, and here she comes again, and I will tape this to the machine so that it is touching. And now you can practice your stippling using the hand motion because it is a different feeling. And you know what? I'm going to just take the piece of paper because this is too thick. I'll scoot this down some. There. Okay, so now I can practice moving my hands rather than moving the pen. And if you can actually even put a document protector on this paper, and that way you don't feel like you're wasting paper. You can just wipe it off and keep going and do more practicing. And you can practice all kinds of things. You can practice your feathers. I really can do feathers better than that. Oh, yeah, no. See, me and pens don't get along. This is why I have trouble with a long arm. I can't draw. You put a pen in my hand, it's like my hands have Parkinson's. So anyway, let me take this off. Okay, we're going to talk about preparing the quilt sandwich. You can spray, you can pin. A lot of times with you want to select the batting, the correct batting. For a beginner, I don't recommend using a polyester batting. is I like to use cotton batting. Why? Because cotton will stick to the fabric. You can use 505 spray or quilt basting spray to spray your layers together. This is small enough that I don't have to. Usually what I do, and there's lots of videos on how to prepare a quilt sandwich. So you want to prepare your quilt sandwich. A lot of times I'll use pins. I spray and use pins, and I don't put them together because why hurt your fingers? So I just leave them as a big glob like this. Can you see the glob? Yeah, see there's a big glob in there. And they're all stuck together. I lent my pins to a friend one time, and she used them, and she sent them back all closed up. And it's like, I was not happy because she had to spend hours putting those pins apart in order to use them. So usually what I do, especially if I don't spray, is I will put these pins about a fist apart. Usually I'll place a few pins because this can be tiring. I'm just going to put a few. I'm not going to put all these down because this one really is not. She's got something, I don't know what. Okay, and then to close these, you can either close them by hand, or I have this little tool, which is handy, or you can use a grapefruit spoon, and then you just use this to quickly just close the pins. You don't want to use great big pins. You want to use like number 2 pins, which this is a number 2, this is a number 3. I have she's got a bottle cap. I don't know where she got that from. Okay, and now we're ready to quilt. So I'm going to come down to this machine, and I'm going to be using my Jane today. Okay, then I'll start at the end, usually on a scrap piece. I'll take a scrap piece of the same fabric, and I want to test my tensions, because tensions are the most important part of quilting, to make sure those tensions are great. Okay, how I start is I will hold on to the needle thread, put my presser foot down, and then come up, and then I'm going to pull that bobbin thread up. So I'll pull it, get it in my hands, go back to the same spot, lower my presser foot, and I usually do 3 stitches holding on to this, otherwise you'll get a big knot underneath. Then you can let it go after you do about 3 stitches, and then usually I'll just do a few just to test my tensions. Now, these tensions are okay. You can tell when you've got bad tensioning, and let me see if I can't force a bad one. Hold on to this thread. Wait a minute. Well, you can tell when you've got bad tensions because the loops will be on the top or underneath, and when you put your fingernail on it, it would go click, 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 click. That means you've got bad tensions, because I sure couldn't see any knots because I have the same color thread in both bobbin and the needle. And that's ideally what you want to do. It's very, very, very difficult to balance out tensions when the thread in the bobbin and the thread in the needle is off. You know, if they're 2 different colors, it's almost impossible. So your best bet, especially as a beginner, is to simply use the same color or the same thread or the same color. So let's take a look at this tension here on this bobbin. Okay, now this is a conventional bobbin, and if you have this kind of bobbin on your machine, it has 2 screws. This one is a smaller one, and this larger one inside of this recessed area is how you set the tension. And you just simply take a small screwdriver and turn that, like, if you think of it as a clock, turn it 1 minute at a time, so you righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So say if my bobbin thread was coming up to the top, you know, I had clicks up here, the bobbins were up, the bobbin thread was coming to the top, I would either lower your needle tension here or tighten your bobbin tension. on a long arm, when I go to work on the tiara, probably next week, because next week we're going to talk about doing some ruler work. And I will use the tiara, which is my favorite machine. There she is. Where is she? She's hiding. There she is. There's my tiara with the tiara sitting on top of the tiara. I'll wear the tiara. Sometimes I wear my tiara when I quilt. Why not? So anyway, and we'll talk about bobbin, because that one handles bobbins a little differently, the tensioning. But this one to me is a little on the tight side, but it's giving me a good stitch. So like if it's not broke, don't fix it. Okay, so then I would put, now if your threads are coming to the bottom all the time, the needle tension might need to be tighter, or this bobbin tension is too tight. Now if I were getting loops underneath and I don't have them, if I did and I went like this and realized it's not moving, and although if I jiggle it, it moves, which for this machine is normal. For the tiara, it is not. Then I would tighten this bobbin, or I would loosen this bobbin tension if I got loops on the bottom. If your bobbin tension isn't right, your needle tension never will be. So always get that bobbin tension correct in the first place. And then we're going to bring the thread to the top, because this one you have to. On the top loading machines, I usually will set that bobbin correctly when I get it going right for quilting, and then I get another bobbin case that I can play with. Yeah, I use that one. Okay, that's set for that thread, and I will be happy. That's where we're going to leave it. Okay, so now to start stitching, we're first going to talk about how to start and stop. Okay, so I'm going to lower my presser foot. And you want, speaking of presser feet, you want to be able to move, when the needle is in the highest position, you want to be able to move your fabric. It shouldn't be binding. It shouldn't be so tight you can't do it. You shouldn't, when it's in its highest position, you also shouldn't be able to be lifting that fabric up and down, because then that's going to give you a quality called flagging, which means that as you're stitching, it's going to bounce up and down and give you skip stitches. So like notice when I go down, see how that foot rises a little bit as it approaches the top? Now it's at its highest position, which means that's when you want to be able to move your fabric. Then I bring my bobbin thread up. Usually what I'll do is just I move it ahead, pull it up, put it back in the same hole, lower my presser foot, lower that needle. Okay, then I will hold on to this and do 3 stitches at a time before I move. No more than that. And then you start to move. Okay, and now I've got then I can check my stitching, and yes, it's very nice stitching. No problem, the tensions are good. And I'll just clip this to get it out of the way. And now when you finish a line, to finish the quilting line, you do is you raise that needle to its highest position, pull the fabric forward, grab that needle thread, put it back in the same hole, lower your needle and come up again, and then pull. See, there's my bobbin thread. So I will usually pull it if I want to bury these threads. Okay, I'll take the part that's moving and clip it. The part that's moving is what's connected to the bobbin, so I clip that. And now what I could do is tie these, take a self-threading needle, and then bury these threads underneath. If you've done what's called a locking stitch, which is 3 stitches in one spot, it is not necessary, at least for most, unless it's an heirloom or a show quilt, then I will bury my knots. For everyday stuff, I just do my locking stitch and then just clip it at the top like I did before, and see, it's neat underneath. Okay. Say I have an applique and it's a heart, okay? Here's my heart. And here's my block. Just use your imagination. It's a block. And that it's even. I'm going to take this pin out as I come to it. Don't run over those pins. You'll break your machine. And let's just say this is stitch in the ditch. So I'm going to... I have learned with time that, and especially with rulers, I can stitch in the ditch just as fast, free motion as I can with the walking foot. So lower the presser foot. There's my boundary. We'll pretend that stitch in the ditch outside my block. Then usually what I'll say, if I try not to break threads because A, I'm lazy and don't want to keep stopping and clipping. But I'm going to go ahead and just sort of wiggle and stipple. You want to keep your speed even, whether it be slow or fast. The preference is yours, whatever you're comfortable with. At first, when I started to quilt, I literally quilted that slow, one stitch at a time. Oh, that'd give me a headache now. And then as you get faster, then as you get more comfortable, you can get faster. What you're looking for is you're wanting the stitches to be the same length. You want them about the same length. And see, now I've outlined that applique. And it's hard to see these stitches because it's dark, so you don't really notice them. But it's not. You want the stitches to be as even as you can. They should be about as long as if you were sewing a seam with your sewing machine and feed dogs are engaged. That's about how long they should be. About 2 millimeters, 2.5 millimeters long each stitch. And you're going to have to train your hands to do that. This machine does not have a speed governor. Most machines do have a speed governor so that you can set the dial to go faster or slower, and you're going to start out slow, and as you become more comfortable, you'll speed up. I have never gotten comfortable enough to where I can stipple or quilt or do anything at full speed. I can't do it, and it's been years. So now you just want to keep an even speed, even movement, because moving it too fast at the same speed causes big stitches. Moving it really slow at the same speed makes little tiny stitches, and they dig in, and God help you if you ever have to remove them. So, and there's no way around this but to practice. Now, some people like to use gloves. I hate gloves. I have them. See, they're right here. And they've been used a lot because they do need washing, but I don't use them because I hate them. I can't feel the fabric. I can't feel the thread, especially if I'm having to pull the thread up. I don't like them. This is what I do like. I don't like finger cuts. I don't like those little handled things, the rings that you put around. I bought all this stuff, and I don't use it. What I do like, and this one is too big, and a smaller one. There, this one. These are Rubbermaid drawer liners. You can get them at the dollar store in a roll. You cut them up, and this now gives you can move your whole quilt with almost no touch at all. It really grips it really well. And for $1 or $2 at the dollar store, you've got a whole, like 20, 30, I got a whole basket full of them. So as I'm quilting and they fall on the floor, no big deal. When I'm all done, I pick them all up, put them back in the basket, just get another one as I need it. And because now I have complete control, I can pick up and mess with whatever I need to mess with. And my hands, so this is about the speed I normally go. It is still not the top speed. I can't control anything at that high speed. This is the speed I usually go. Occasionally I'll go, and this one's harder to control speed. Tiara is easier. And this just takes practice, that's all. You just have to take the time to practice. If you're worried about messing, I just got, you know, a little piece of fabric here, and I always have a piece of fabric to warm up. Even if I have quilted in the morning, then I stop and go have dinner or something, and then I come back and quilt again, I will take my practice piece and I will just do a little bit to warm up. Because even after these days, I get these things called the jerkies. I'll go like this, I'm doing fine, and then blah, like, oops. How the heck that? You just have this jerk, and it just happens. It's like this machine it's possessed. So yeah, I'll get these little spikes everywhere where my hands will jerk, and it's okay. That's why I like to warm up, because as you warm up, that happens less and less. It tends to happen when you're trying to quilt cold. So that's a good thing to practice. This one here is Leah Day has a site that's called Free Motion Quilting Project. In fact, if you put Free Motion Quilting, Leah Day, she had a blog years and years ago that she would show these videos, and they like numbers, and I would number them, day number. It was called the 365 Days of Free Motion Quilting. And so every day she'd show you a video on how to do something, how to quilt a particular pattern. And I just took a 20-inch by 20-inch piece of fabric, and I just put it in a grid. I just drew a grid on it. And this is, you can use up your yucky threads that way. And like on day 105, this is the pattern she taught. So you watch the video, and then you do this little pattern just like she shows it. And this actually becomes like an inspiration when I don't know what I want to do, and I'm trying to think what I want to quilt. I rarely plan a quilt out before I put it together. Usually when I have a quilt, the first thing I do is just stitch in the ditch all the straight lines, and then sort of decide what I want to do as I go along. So I rarely have the opportunity to put my quilt top on a light box and plan out my quilting with using the friction pens or the blue markers. I'm more of a spur of the moment. I quilt whatever I feel like at the moment. So no two quilts. This is why I marathon quilt, because I find if I wait a few days, I can't quilt the same thing in a different part. So if I'm quilting a border, I do the whole border before I stop, because I won't be able to do one part of the border and then go away and do the other part of the border and have them look the same. They always look different. So, but a lot of times I will use these to help me decide what I want to do. I also arm myself with lots of books, and I do when I don't know what I want to do, I always resort to quilting, because after a while I'll resort to stippling, because it's easy and I don't have to think. After you get it down pat, you don't have to think about it. A stippling is not necessarily all stippling. It can be other things. So what I did is I turned this into a table runner. Until next time, Lily says goodbye and have a good week. Bye.